today you're going to learn why the book of the Bible, the first book of the Bible, is not named Genesis.
Genesis is a name that we know that has been given, but it was given a long time after that book was written.
Actually, it was Jerome, 600 years after Yeshua rose from the dead. Jerome renamed the books of the Bible. Now, then it was the Old Testament. So the real name of the first book of the Bible is
Bereshit is the name, and that includes 3 words.
3 words in one. That name again is Bereshit. It means
in the beginning. So what happened in the beginning?
Well, in the beginning, we should look at the very first letter in Hebrew. But it's important to say that when Yeshua read the Bible, he read it from scrolls. And the name of that first book was Bereshit. It was not Genesis. So let's look at that first letter. That first letter in the word Bereshit is?
The first letter is a bait. And the rabbis say about that, why would he begin the first book of the Bible with a bait and not an aleph?
The bait is the second letter in the Hebrew aleph, bait. So why is that? Here is the God of all gods wanting to explain his thoughts, his love, his interactions with humanity. Why in the world would he start with that letter?
Well, when we take the bait to the Paleo-Hebrew, it begins to paint a great picture of how much Adonai loves us. Because in the Paleo-Hebrew, bait is the letter for building a house. And it makes total sense then when you understand that first Adonai, because he loves us, would build a house for us.
Now, I can personally relate to this. When I was wanting to know what the God of the universe is really like and make those decisions for my own life, I moved to Israel. I rented a house. Mm-hmm. And as I moved into this house, which was in the Jerusalem forest, and it was really peaceful and really beautiful. As I was in that house and I began to experience what it was like to live in the land of the Bible, I began to understand that Adonai is calling all of us to come home to him, to come into, if you will, his house.
And it's so important that we understand, why would he put the stars in the heaven and create light and separate light from darkness? And then the very last thing that he creates is mankind. Why would he first of all create mankind if he didn't first build a house for man to live in? So important for us to understand how much he loves us and wanted a house first, and then man could move into that house.
So as he opens himself to humanity with this written word and this first book called Bereshit, it means in the beginning. Now, that little word in is really important because it's not like, hey, I'm God. You stand out there, you little lowlings, and I'll decide if you're good enough to, belong to me or walk with me. No, he said, no matter how you are, no matter where you are, come in and come into my house, because some people make coming into the house of Adonai, I got to clean it up. I got to do all these things so that he don't get mad at me. Well, Adonai doesn't have an anger problem.
That's it.
He really doesn't. He has a love. It's not a problem, but a heart of love. And he invites us, come on in to my home, which is his big, loving heart.
Well, and it's also important for us to understand this, Yana, that A house in the Western culture today has 4 walls, a roof, windows, and a doors, but it's a closed-in structure. And if you're inside that house, you can only see outside when you go to the door and open a small entrance or these small windows. But the house that Yahweh built is a 3-sided house because that's what the letter Beit is. It has 3 sides to it, but one side is totally open. In other words, you can go in and out. You can move to and fro. And his house is just like a father who is always standing there waiting to receive you back in after you've been out during the day or for a period of time.
I love that. You know why I love that? Because that means I'm not being controlled. I can go out and live my life, hopefully in a good and healthy way, and then I can come so close, or even better, as I go out of the house, like in our everyday life. We have a very good Father, and He loving and He's kind. And so as we go out, we're carrying all His goodness with us. And so we're not controlled. We're making good choices because we are so loved. Here's another thing about the letter Beit. I love this. The difference when you write this letter in Hebrew, if it has a dot inside of it called a dagish, it takes on a whole new meaning than writing this letter without that dot. That dot inside Bereshit, inside the Beit, means this, that there's something inside the house. Because he could have written that word as a Beit, a V without the dot, instead of the B. But that dot inside that first letter says that there is something inside his house.
And when we understand that really that's the purpose of the house, that the house is nothing until it is filled with something on the inside. And all of us understand that this temple right here, this house on the inside is the matter. That is the character. That is the essence of who we are and who we belong to and how we feel and the whole personality. And that is exactly what the Beit is all about. What fills the house on the inside?
Well, I love that we have a house. I love that we have a God who is inviting us into the house. I love that Adonai is not concerned with controlling us. His heart is to invite us and to be a part of our lives on an ongoing basis. This is what I discovered when I moved to Israel, moved into a house, and found forever a God who loves me and wants me to be included in all aspects of his life. Well, today we've talked about a lot. We've talked about how the first book of the Bible is not really Genesis, that it's named Bereshit, and there's a house for you and for myself.
I remember that too, Yana, when I first went to Israel. You know, I was older, and then all of a sudden, I'd never traveled internationally. When that plane landed in Israel, something on the inside of me clicked, and I started crying out, I'm home. I'm home. And that whole week that I was in Israel, my life got turned upside down. And this is why. Because I had, for the first time in my life, at an older age, stepped inside the home of Adonai. And all of a sudden became who I was created to be and realized that.
I got to see that. I was a part of that. I kept provoking you and saying, you got to come home.
Yes,
you got to
did.
come to Israel. And thankfully, sis, you did.
Amen.
All right. I hope you've enjoyed this teaching today. It's been our joy to be with you. You are invited into the Bible through the first letter. It's not Genesis, it's Bereshit. So if you want to know, how did Adonai introduce himself to humanity? What name did he choose? Make sure you watch part 2.